Welcome to another episode of Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton, and on this episode, we're going to talk about a game that a lot of people have been waiting for all season. The Cleveland Browns are hosting the Tennessee Titans, and that means Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders will be sharing the football field this Sunday. And I brought on someone that has a unique view of these two gentlemen in terms of the city where he's from, the city he represents. That would be Cleveland, Ohio. Mr. Chauncy Sanders,
That's
what's
right.
going on, man?
Hey, Mike, glad to be back on the show. Of course, you've had me earlier a couple years ago, and now I'm excited. I get to talk a little bit about the home squad.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're going to get into the Cleveland Browns, Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, and more. And of course, we're going to talk about you. But of course, before we do that, we do have a bit of business. Before the show kind of gets into talking about our guest or talking about the subject, I always talk about things that are just on my mind. And something that's on my mind is I saw it this morning, and I had to double take when I saw it. Chris Paul got sent home. Yes,
Right.
Chris Paul, who's entering with his 21st year in the NBA, playing. He chose to play for the Los Angeles Clippers. Chose to go back out there. Chose to be near his family. And for all his troubles, he gets sent home. Now there is a bit of backstory behind that. Of course, there was a little bit of beef because he was telling it like it was, and some folks did not like it, including players, including coaches, things like that. So basically, he was holding them accountable, and they didn't want to be held accountable. They wanted to be stuck in their ways, which the Clippers haven't even won more than 7 games this year so far. So you know, basically, to me, how do you cut someone that is arguably the greatest Clipper of all time? How do you cut someone that is going to be on his retirement tour, and he's going to be on his retirement tour?
Right.
How do you cut someone that the jersey of Chris Paul will probably be hanging one day in their rafters? How do you do that if you're the Los Angeles Clippers? To me, it's pretty insane that happened, but it's very, very on brand for the Los Angeles Clippers. And I'll leave it at that. Chauncey, you got anything else to add to that, man?
Yeah, I think it's disappointing. I think it's disappointing how the athletes today, especially in the NBA, are sent away packing towards the end of their careers. You go back and look at some of the notable guys that have recently retired, whether it was Carmelo Anthony, to Dwayne Wade, so on and so forth. These guys are even Manu Ginobili. He didn't finish as a Spur as well. These
Mm-hmm.
opportunities where we get to really send our guys that have had great illustrious careers out into the sunset the right way. It seems like it just never goes to plan, and it's really disappointing, especially recently, where we see some of these athletes now, or it feels like they've been, and to some of them, they believe they're being disrespected these days. So I think it's really disappointing to see. I think Chris Paul could definitely give the Clippers and hopefully soon another team that comes about. I would hope it maybe the New Orleans Pelicans. Not a Pelicans fan. I know I saw the odds that of course the Cleveland Cavs are high to try to make a move on Chris Paul. Not sure the reasoning behind that, but I think there's a lot of NBA teams where he can really give back and they can benefit from having a veteran, a guy that saw a lot of basketball experience and a lot of playoff experience in Chris Paul on their roster.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. You thought Chris Paul was going to be living life like it's golden, as the Jill Scott picture is behind you, but
Right, right.
unfortunately, it just not work out. Just did not work out that way, and it's very, very sad to see. But one thing that is very sad to see is, you man, you've been doing a few things. I've been paying attention. And you definitely have been out and about. So, can you tell everyone what have you been up to lately, man? I remember Alabama A&M. I saw you there at the stadium, doing your thing there, and I mean, I know you've got a lot of great and wonderful things going on, or building towards a lot of great, wonderful things as well.
Yeah, that's right, Mike. We had a great time in the Battle of I-65. in the Legacy Classic now, between Alabama A&M and Tennessee State, and we've crossed paths so many times. It's always awesome to me to come across you and really get some knowledge and get some game, and also see you do your thing as well. And I really have been able to, this past year, just really get a chance to hone in and display some of the things I've learned along the way, this upcoming year, whether that was from Los Angeles as an on-air talent to behind the scenes and my writing skills at Seattle with the Seahawks. So I've been able to take those opportunities and combine those skill sets and try to, do my best out here in this freelance world, I guess I can say now. Doing some pre and post game hosting for Alabama A&M football as of recent, as that season ends. I'm also still doing play by play. So, learning what I've learned from Seattle as well, from behind the scenes, from a play by play perspective recently, now being able to sprinkle some of that skill set and that knowledge in as well now recently with reps and opportunities, as I'll be preparing tomorrow to appear on Swag TV as a play by play announcer for the Lady Bulldogs as they host Tuskegee. Even though I'm a little bit ahead today, Tennessee State is actually tipping off against Alabama A&M at the event center, but the Lady Bulldogs will be hosting Tuskegee as well. It'll be elementary day, so trying to get my ears prepared for all those kids. It's supposed to be anticipating somewhat of almost 3,000 kids there for the moment the Lady Bulldogs may score 67 points. So uh,
Oh
you know
gosh.
Crazy, man. I know it's a phenomenon now. I don't know what it means. I start to feel my age a little bit now, but it's fun seeing everybody kind of celebrate that, and I'm sure the kids will have a wonderful experience and a great HBCU experience. But Mike, I've just been everywhere, man, and it's really been a blessing to have opportunities to where you can display some of the things you learned, and now you see your experience coming across. And I think this has honestly been one of my more dedicated, my one of my more focused years I've had in quite some time. And I see it in the discipline and the way that I attack different things and different productions. And you know, what I can tell you all right now is just stay tuned, because we got quite a few projects coming soon, and I'm really excited for the upcoming year because I also have one of my bigger projects, and I guess I could say it now, here on tour in the AFC South, that I threw my hat in as a director and a producer, for a documentary project coming soon. So I'm really excited for that to release as well in the upcoming year.
Nice, nice. Well, congratulations, man. I'm very, very proud of you. Very, very happy for all the great, wonderful things that are happening for you, and the great, wonderful things that are to come for you as well. Yeah, very happy for you, my man. Now, I do have to get a little background on you because, of course, you didn't just start where you are.
Right.
So, when did you first kind of get into journalism and wanting to be an on-air talent?
Oof. Honestly, I think I'll start back to when I wanted to. Initially, I had this idea when I was 13 years old. I had a project, and of course, it's the what do you see yourself doing in the future? And I grew up in arguably one of the better broadcast cities in all of the country, if not the world, in Cleveland, Ohio, where you had the Cleveland Cavs, of course, your major league teams, with the Browns, which we'll get into later on, pray for them, and also the Cleveland Guardians. And so you've had guys like Tom Hamilton, Joe Tate, Fred McLeod, the great Jim Donovan, the former play-by-play for the Browns, where these guys were like my professors. They were my Sesame Street growing up, to a point where I had a radio right above my bed. So I would always, if it got too late and the Browns were on Monday night against the Giants, or LeBron and the Cavs, or over in the Rose Garden in Portland, I would have to turn on the radio instead of watching it on TV. So you had that mix of both worlds there. And so that's how I kind of got influenced into being a play by play early. Fast forward 16 years old, I finally come against another project, my second time now, and my English teacher at the time, uh, Mr. Rick Knuck, he gave me a project, and it was the Nightingale Project. And with that Nightingale Project, it also detailed what you see yourself doing in the future. And in that, I was a little more descriptive than I once was at 13 about where I wanted to go, how I wanted to do it. I wanted my own production. I talked about being a play-by-play broadcaster and, appearing on one of these 3 or 4-letter networks, as he's recently challenged me as well. And, it took me a long way, and then later on into my 16 to maybe my senior year of high school as well, it gets a little fuzzy now. Um, I skipped class, and it sounds crazy, but I skipped school that day, to go and see a live taping of First Take. And I can't tell you, how influential that day was. It was honestly one of the greatest sports days in all of Northeast Ohio history, because the Cavs were raising their banner, their first NBA championship, along with the Guardians, Indians at the time, throwing the first pitch in game one of the World Series in 2017. So I was able to not only see all of this going on, the energy, the buzz around the city, but I was there in person to see First Take. And with that, I had the opportunity to be introduced to Stephen A. Smith for the first time. And, from there, we built this relationship. But he also gave me great knowledge and information on how I want to go about to get to where I am today and to get to a point where he is today, where we all want to strive to be at as journalists. And so from there, it was just, hitting the ground running at 18.
Okay. All right. All right. So, you mentioned getting advice from different people. You mentioned mainly Stephen A. Smith, but what is one lesson you have learned through your career journey?
That's a great question, Mike. I'm sure you always got some great questions. I honestly still stand with the one that I've always been able to uh, kind of leave as one of my, I guess, my morning creed, or one of, to some degree, some people would say, which is, if you're going to be lazy, quit. And that was from Stephen A. Smith when I turned 19. And I was sitting in a radio station like I am now with him, shadowing when he had his then radio show at ESPN, the Stephen A. Smith Show. And during the 2018 finals, I'm just a fly on the wall, and you know, I'm looking for opportunities. And honestly, those don't come too handy. Those don't come too often for people that look like you and I. And here, this figure is highest paid man coming off of his 9 to 12 show, getting ready to do another production, and he has the humility to say, "You know what, young man, come with me, because I've been in your shoes before. I knew where you're coming from. I know what it feels like. Come sit with me, and I'll show you the radio ways, but I'll also show you the business." And it's funny now when I think about it, about all the things that we had conversed about in that moment. Um, that one just stands out to me because it also reminds me about why I'm doing this. It's not just for myself and for the people that are around me at home, but it's also for those that come behind us. And Mike, I'm sure you can attest to this when you're at NABJ, when you're at the Black Sports Business Symposium. There's a lot of young people that look like us that are trying to get into this business that may not have the experience that you and I have shared. And so, with that, I want to make sure that I'm setting the right example. What does the right example look like? It's getting to work on time. It's being a good team player. It's being a person that's there supporting and also doing your job. And so, with that saying that he gave me, if you're going to be lazy, quit. I take that personally, and I told him that recently in October at the Magic City Classic. I still hold on to that, and it's almost like a morning creed. As I prepare for the day, I always remind myself about, hey, we can't take any days off, and we're here in December now, and this is honestly the month where everyone takes off. And I'm
Mhm.
constantly reminding myself, this is where you separate. This is where you separate at going into the next year. You already are a month ahead. There's no taking off. There's no I'm going to just coast throughout the month because the holidays are here and we're all getting ready for the next year, and I'll just be ready to roll when we get into January, into the new year. And no, you got to be ready to go now. And so honestly, that's something that I just take with me. There's no days off.
Right, right. I hear you there. Now, of course, we do have a guest that actually stopped through. That would be man, I know this guy. Actually these
Okay.
guys, the Barbershop Sports Talk
What's going
podcast.
on?
I've been on there a few times. He's saying, "Evening, fellas, what's going on? What's going on, man? Love that show. Enjoy going on that show and talking to the fellas for sure.
Nice.
One's a Baltimore fan, one is a Pittsburgh fan. How about that?"
Brother. Oof, that's rough. That's rough there.
Yeah.
I feel like all Baltimore fans, and this is a hot take, all Baltimore fans are technically Browns fans if we're being real here. So, I love picking on those AFC North brothers because technically the AFC North wouldn't be the AFC North without the Browns. So, it's just that. The Steelers are the establishment within themselves, but you are technically birthed three teams there between the Ravens and the Bengals through the Browns. So, don't hate me, but that's just the facts.
There you go, trying to stir stuff up, man. But hey, what we gotta do next is we gotta stir up this commercial. It's we'll be right back at the commercial, and of course we gotta talk a little Shedeur Sanders and a little Cam Ward as they meet for the first time as professionals. We'll be right back. EBO Beard Butter and EBO Beard Wash are two of the best beard grooming products for men worldwide. They help promote growth, keep your beard moisturized and soft, and enhance your overall upkeep of your facial hair. And with the new promo code MPAFC10, you can get 10% off on these products. Just go to www.etsy.com/shop/EBO Beard Butter. Again, that's www.etsy.com/shop/EBO Beard Butter. And again, the promo code MPAFC10. Again, MPAFC10, where you can get 10% off any products except for beard boxes. So treat your beard better today by going to get the EBO Beard Butter and EBO Beard Wash. All right, we are back on touring the AFC South with your host Mike Patton and my special guest Chauncy Sanders, and of course, we got to talk about Chauncey's cousin. No, it isn't. It isn't Chauncey's cousin. But
You stirring the pot up
we are
over
going
there. No, no. Brother from
no. Be honest, Chauncey. But yeah, we are going to talk about Cam Ward versus Shedeur Sanders. Now, of course, they are not going to be opposing each other in the literal sense because both of them play offense. But this is a matchup of guys that actually worked out together during the summer, text each other. They're not texting each other this week per Cam Ward at the press conference. But in the offseason, they text each other and things like that. And they'll probably work out again with each other this offseason. But for this game, they are competitors against each other. Now, of course, they both have had their high and their low moments. Most notably, the win in Arizona was quite interesting for Cam Ward, and then plus his performance against the Seattle Seahawks was a high point for him as well. With Shedeur Sanders, of course, getting the win in Oakland and against Las Vegas. I'm sorry, I keep wanting to call him Oakland sometimes, but getting the win in Las Vegas in his first official start, right, and then going back and then having a tough game against the San Francisco 49ers, although he did do some good things in that game. But, these two have had their high and low moments. They've also trained together this offseason, which, like I mentioned, what do you feel about seeing these two competitors match up this Sunday? I mean, the energy around those two going into the draft was great, and the energy to me going into this game is going to be great too.
Oh, it's going to be electric. I'll tell you that much, Mike. It might be freezing cold out in Cleveland, but it's going to be burning up. It's going to be electric. It's going to be hot there on the field at Huntington Bank Field because these two teams are looking to build momentum going into next season. There's a lot on the line for both of these teams, though the Titans just want to honestly get the season over with. The Browns, on the other hand, there's some momentum and there's some murmurs there. For this coaching staff, this is a game that they can't afford to lose. And so with Shedeur, he's in a different situation per se than Cam Ward. Cam Ward knows that he's going into the offseason as quarterback one. Though there may be some questions about him, he's still going in as quarterback one. There's not going to be much of a competition for him as he's looked at as a cornerstone for this franchise in the Titans versus Shador, where there's plenty of questions surrounding still. Is he the guy? Do the Browns need to move and get another quarterback in the draft, or do they need to find a veteran? There's also been rumors this morning about the Browns maybe trading up to go get Mendoza from the Indiana Hoosiers. So there's plenty of questions surrounding the Cleveland Browns and the facility out there in Berea right now for the quarterback position. And also, there's a new designation. I'm not sure if you caught that this morning, Mike.
Yes, I did.
Slow news cycle earlier today, but Deshaun Watson has also been uh, able to practice. He's finally activated to practice with the team. So that's something to keep an eye on as well as we head towards the end of the season. So the Browns have and Shador and Cam have this unique situation between both of these guys where I think there's a lot to play for. Obviously, there's bragging rights between the two, but also there's situations and questions that both of these guys are looking to answer as they prepare for Sunday's matchup.
For sure, for sure. Now, of course, Cam Ward has not had the greatest season. You mentioned Cam Ward and some murmurs and thoughts about him. For the season so far, he's got 7 touchdowns, and of course, you include the running one he had against the Seattle Seahawks. That gives you 8 total touchdowns and 6 interceptions for the season. What are your thoughts on the things that you've heard maybe about him versus the things you maybe have seen or will hope to see from him going forward?
Honestly, I think that a lot of people have high respect for the quarterback. I think they really love what they have saw throughout some of the struggles and circumstances that he's been given, because it's not an easy feat. This team obviously lost its head coach, and you could say that the ship kind of lost its wheels here earlier into the season than they may have anticipated. They knew they could be a little competitive here, but I don't think they had high expectations as far as going deep into the playoffs and things of that nature as they want to just yet. And so with that, you've seen him struggle a bit. You've seen Cam kind of have opportunities where he also looked really crisp in his passing. His footwork looks amazing. His arm is very talented. He can throw bombs. I think one thing that catches my eye with Cam is his processing. He's a quick processor and he gets the ball out quick. And that's going to be really helpful this week when he goes up to Cleveland against Myles Garrett. I'm sure we'll get into that later on. But I really like what I've saw from him so far. I'm excited to see how he bounces back. Obviously, it looked pretty good bouncing back, in my honest opinion, from the Seahawks. I thought they had a really challenging week with them coming into town. That defensive line is really good, really talented between Byron Murphy, who's coming into his own this year, and also Leonard Williams out there on the edge, along with Jaron Reed inside. Those guys are a really good bunch, and they're going to be eerie similar with Cleveland coming as well now as he looks forward to this. But I think the experience is going to pay off big time. It's going to pay off dividends for him because you're seeing these teams come across these defensive lines and these defenses against the Titans. I think with that, you go into next year where the schedule may be relatively a bit softer. It's the NFL, nothing comes easy, but with the season like this, you usually get a softer schedule. You may not see Myles Garrett on your schedule the upcoming year, though you may see TJ Watt, but that's okay because you saw Myles Garrett and you saw Leonard Williams. You have an understanding to where you need to get the ball out. You got an understanding of your timing. You got an understanding of your pocket presence, recognizing defenses, recognizing that blitz, where now it comes easier to you to recognize, make that adjustment, and you can capitalize on it. So I think this is great experience. I think he's a really talented young man, and I think the future is very bright with him under the helm.
It definitely is. You spoke of the processing. Starting the season, he was holding the ball just a little bit, but as the
Right.
season goes on, he's had moments where he's processing things a lot quicker. And also just he actually Seattle started to use his wheels a little bit, which people have been kind of clamoring for him to do. Flip side of that one, let's talk about Shedeur. Shedeur didn't necessarily get the ball from the start, but eventually he got his time. And the one thing that I could say about him is people either love Shedeur or they have a real dislike for Shedeur. And I think one of those things has to do with the confidence that he carries himself with. Can you just speak to the confidence that he carries himself with, even in good and bad times, and the kind of the emotion that he brings along with it, or the nonchalantness sometimes he brings along with it as well?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, whether you love or hate him, you got to watch him.
Right.
That's for sure. You got to watch. And so, I think Shador is a very unique person coming into the league, and I think he is going to be an example of what to expect with young men coming into the league moving forward from the collegiate space because of the NIL deals, because of the way that the amateurism of that sport has slowly declined and the professionalism has slowly risen in that sport. I mean, to be quite honest, I think that might be an understatement. I think it's quickly right the way things look nowadays, especially with the recent coaching changes in the collegiate space. These guys have to adjust much quicker, along with the playoff experience now. So these young men, they're not coming in all shucks glad to be here. They're anticipating and they expect to be where they are. And I think Shador, having one of the more prolific athletes in all of sports as his father, carries that same attitude. He's not glad to be here. He's expected to be starting. And, of course, there is a notion that people don't like some of his confidence, but I think people that necessarily may lack that, don't mistake the arrogance or my confidence for your arrogance is something that I've heard the sentiment be relayed from his camp and from his father. Don't take my confidence in myself and what I can do and my preparation to getting to this space as arrogance because we've seen it through other folks that may not look like them where they've had that same confidence and they weren't necessarily punished or they weren't necessarily criticized for that. In fact, they were celebrated in a guy like Jackson Dart. I think it's interesting that you have one quarterback who wears the same flashy chains, wears the grills, celebrated like a guy like Jackson Dart, or even look at a veteran just a couple years ago, a couple seasons ago and Kirk Cousins, and we all love the Kirko guy with the chains and the glasses, but now we hate Shador for doing his own thing and doing it his way. I think that's a very interesting take if you ask me.
Definitely, definitely. And without saying it, you definitely said what a lot of people have been thinking and talking about when it comes to Shedeur Sanders for sure. But kind of put a bow on everything. Um, what do you expect to see for both of these teams both of these starting quarterbacks come Sunday?
Well, I expect them to want to try to outdo each other. That's that's first and foremost. I think these guys really want to outdo each other. They want to really try to make a great impression on their head coaches moving forward. Definitely on Shador's end. I know he is really looking to capitalize on another opportunity and try to correct some of the mistakes that he made in the past week against the Niners. I thought he saw a great defense and that was a good experience versus seeing a team, and that's no disrespect because I know the head coach and some of those guys over there in the Raiders, but they aren't on the same caliber as the Niners. And so, now Shador gets another look at another team and can compete, and he's going to look to compete at a high level. And it's the same with Cam Ward as well. Now he's getting another defensive look. Every week it's a different opportunity to get better for these two guys. And so with that Jim Schwartz defense, Cam's going to be looking for his guys to help him out. Whether that's and the Titans have all spoke about that today, whether it was Jeffrey Simmons to Peter Skoronski or also JC Lathan, that those guys are on that offensive line and they know what they can expect. They expect Myles Garrett to be coming at them full force. They expect a guy like Mason Graham and also Shelby Harris on the inside, along with Mike Hall, who's going to have a bigger role this week due to injuries on that defensive line, to be coming full force, just like the Seahawks were and just like the Rams were earlier in the season as well. So, this game is going to be really highly anticipated. I think this is going to be one of the ones that people circle secretly in that 1 o'clock window come Sunday. And I'm really excited. I know you guys should as well. I know Mike, you're going to be excited to watch at home, and I'm anticipating it to be a really fun one, especially on the defensive side of the ball for these two clubs.
Definitely. You got Myles Garrett and you got Jeffrey Simmons, which we're going to talk about. But first, we got to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back on Touring the AFC South.
A shift. A shift is something that happens and changes the dynamics. And that's what happened when Garrett Logistics was born. After 10 years as a sales pro in the logistics world of sporting goods, John Garrett decided to pivot to the world of freight and start a brokerage. So you're saying to yourself, why trust Garrett Logistics? Well, Garrett Logistics helps shippers improve overall workflow, along with increased on-time pickup and delivery percentages. Last-minute loads, multi-drop pickups, and more are part of the services with Garrett Logistics. They're available Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., all times Central Standard Time. So give them a ring at 615-400-8484. That's 615-400-8484, or you can email them at john@garrettlogistics.co or visit their website at garrettlogistics.co. Garrett Logistics, where the motto is, it's not just freight to us, it's your business.
All right, and we are back on Touring the AFC South. And like I mentioned before the break, we are going to talk a little bit about Cleveland versus Tennessee. We're going to bring it all around for the entire team effort on this one. And of course, like you mentioned a little bit before the break, you mentioned a particular gentleman that is haunting people's dreams, giving people nightmares, and taking out offensive lines 1 week at a time. That would be Mr. Myles Garrett. He has 19 sacks with 5 games left. He could literally set the NFL sack record literally probably this week or next week. So with that being said, and how terrifying he can be, I still remember when he was when they were moving somebody in motion, when Myles Garrett was going from side to side and the Titans were moving somebody motion to motion, side to side to kind of match him as well. But how terrified or how shook should the Titans offensive line be, knowing that that man is standing over there and he's ready to do work?
Well, whether it's the offense or the defense, they've all mentioned him this week, and everyone has their eyes on 95. As you mentioned, he can do it in his sleep, and honestly, he reminds me exactly like the Halloween character he came in as a couple Halloweens ago as Vecna, as we're around this Stranger Things phenomenon, as they've recently dropped a new season. He's hunting people in their sleeps, and I'm sure he's definitely in Cam Ward nightmares and his dreams this coming week, because that guy, he's on a different level this week in this season, Mike. I think he is primed for the Defensive Player of the Year award, no question. I also think that the Browns quietly will have the rookie Defensive Player of the Year as well in Carson Schwarzenegger, just a name to throw out there as well. In the way he's been able to tackle, he reminds me a lot of Cam on the opposite side with Tennessee. So I think that Myles Garrett is going to be ferocious. I think for the Titans, it's best if you try to leave a guy there to chip. I'm sure you'll have tight ends out there that are going to be looking to chip as well, especially with Gunner out there as well. I think we'll see a lot of 13 personnel for the Titans this coming week just to try to neutralize him. I mean, you could try to double team, but I think Myles Garrett's also really good with changing his positioning on the defensive line. That's something you got to keep an eye out on for the Titans is where is 95? Where is he lining up at? Okay, is he lining up on the right side this time? Wait a second. Now he's on the interior. What is he doing there? And he has that patented Euro step that's been really paying off as well. He's been a guy that has a little bit of a basketball acumen, and he's been showing it all season long. And you look at last week and the way he battled on that on that line, and with the Hall of Famer over there and Big Trent, and he put on a nice Euro step move on Trent, and he got the best of him on a snap. And I think it's a real shame that Myles Garrett does not have the opportunity to continue to compete further along in his seasons as a member of the Browns into the postseason. I think it's a real shame and disservice that we don't get to see him try to compete for a Super Bowl year in and year out.
Yeah, very much is. And honestly, I keep wondering, what is he going to have like the Reggie White career arc, where it's later in his career he's playing for a championship level team, still
Right.
has something left in the tank, but just not being the same exact guy he once was. So I
Right.
kind of see
Right.
that arc.
Yep.
Now on the flip side, got to talk about Big Jeffrey Simmons. He started the season like a house on fire. Caught a hamstring injury, missed a couple games, but still, that's one of the best interior defensive linemen in the NFL. If not,
Oh, yeah.
he's not outside the top 3 in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
But he has been able to put pressure on quarterbacks, and he has helped other defensive linemen get free to rush the passer as well. So right guard Wyatt Teller is out this game. And that's a guy that would contend with him in the interior. So, what kind of problems is that Cleveland offensive line going to have with Big Jeff in the middle and also Tavondre Sweat in there?
Yeah, it's a weird situation over there with Wyatt Teller, one to keep an eye on moving forward, especially towards the offseason. But I think that the athleticism aspect of the offensive line has already been challenging. And with Teller being out, I think that questions that even more. So I think that the Browns will also be using a lot of run operation, very similar to the offensive operation that they had last week with the Niners, where you saw a lot of featured backs in there, whether it was Jerome Ford to, of course, Quinshawn Junkins and as well as Dylan Sampson, the rookies. So I think you're going to see a lot of run, but also there's going to be some play action to get Shedeur out of that pocket. And I think for the Titans, it's important and imperative that you keep him within that pocket. You keep him within that range because you don't want him to kind of get loose. We know that when he's able to get loose a little bit outside of the pocket, great things happen. And so, I think that for Shador, he definitely has to get rid of the ball a little bit quicker. I think his footwork has to be a little bit better, a little bit quicker. And I think he spoke to it best today in his weekly press conference about just trusting his instinct, trust it, let it go. And, and to his point and what he said, shoot it, just pull the trigger, even though, he was meaning not to probably use those words necessarily in this day and age in this climate,
Right.
but let it go and trust your first instinct. And I think we saw that in an earlier pass that he made to Jared Judy.
Mhm. Right. And speaking of Jerry Judy, they had a little bit of a discussion last week, and it caught a lot of airplay. And some were wondering, oh, is he just going in on the rookie or anything like that? But to me, I see it as, hey, it's 2 football players that are competitors arguing and trying to win a game with their at the end of the day teammates. So do you think that maybe him and Shador will be potentially more on the same page, going against a Titan secondary that is dealing with a few injuries as well.
I can see that. You know, this offense has been very rookie quarterback friendly, if you will, with the offense coordinator and Tommy Reese, where he's been looking to keep Shedeur safe, make easier reads. As you saw last week, he's throwing a lot of screen passes, making the easier precision. But I think the challenge this week will be okay, Shedeur, we know you can throw to the flat. That's something that's going to be there and it's going to be safe. But, trust your eyes. And I think Jared had a great point that he could have probably thrown that ball a little bit earlier than he did. There was a window there, but also I think there's a way to go about that. And for a veteran wide receiver, you got to make sure that you build that trust and that you also are more supportive to your rookie quarterbacks. And I know it's challenging this year. I briefly had a conversation with Jerry, just a couple months ago prior to the season kicking off about the opportunity with these quarterbacks and the situation that was coming about in Berea. And he said, I just have to be ready for no matter who's throwing the football. And I'm sure we'll find a clip for social, but I think Jerry has some frustration. It's been a pretty disappointing season. I know there were some expectations there about maybe competing at a higher level than what they were. And, these things happen with families. And I think head coach Kevin Stefanski spoke on that really well about how, you know, families fight, but they also move forward. And so I'm looking forward to that this week, seeing these two guys try to connect and get on the right page. I think Shador has done a great job trying to spread the ball around, whether it's to Isaiah Bond. You saw the touchdown with Harold Fannin, and he and Harold's rapport is really well. And I expect that to be with our featured wide receiver, our wide receiver one, in Jerry Judy as well.
It's definitely going to be interesting to watch. Another interesting thing to watch: Titans tight ends. Titans tight ends, when they're active in the offense, which there are Chiga Quanko and Gunnar Helm, when they're active in the offense, the offense seems to be better as well. Cam gets to grab the football a little bit more, and you just have more things that happen positively for this offense. With this Browns secondary, this Browns defense is very, very stingy. They're one of the best in the league, although the record doesn't show that, of course, obviously, but hey,
Right.
they're handling their own.
Oh yeah.
How much do you expect them to kind of suffocate this Titans offense, or do you expect this Titans offense to give them some problems, maybe with the two tight end look a little bit more?
I think the Titans offense will present some challenges, but I also think there is a certain person in brown and orange that may be looking to, I don't know, per se, audition for the head coaching position available for the Titans this coming off season. And Jim Schwartz. I think that would be a name that I would throw out there. I'm sure it would be around the league as well for some of these openings in head coaching positions because Jim Schwartz has done a phenomenal job with this Browns defense. What he's been able to do with the young guys and blending that defensive line with Graham and Hall, with Shelby Harris and Myles Garrett, those vets and that younger presence, getting them all on the same page. But then, as you mentioned, that secondary can be stingy, whether it's Denzel Ward with also now new additions, whether it was from Jacksonville, but then you also have safety Grant Delpit, who's came into his own as well with Ronnie Hickman. So those guys, they are pretty stingy. There's some blend of youth talent with also veteran presence. And, I think it's also such a shame, and I'd be remiss to not mention that they are missing a veteran and a leader in Jeremiah Owusu Koromora as well, who's been out this season at linebacker. But my goodness, what a beautiful sight it has been this season. And honestly, I think it's one of the brighter spots in the Browns season, despite it looking the way it has this season, in Carson Swersinger, the rookie leading tackler this season. He's been phenomenal as well, being all over the place. He reminds me often, especially in the run, of one, and I think it's a high regard in the Bobby Wagner. Seeing him up close and personal. you're able to see how those guys kind of get into those gaps and handle their business in stopping the run. So I think, this defense has been really impressive, and I'm not expecting that to change.
Okay. All right. So I want to get your prediction on this game and if you have some players to watch as well.
Yeah, I think Schlesinger is definitely one of those. I think this is going to be a high level game, as I've mentioned throughout the podcast. And I think that the Browns probably come out of this one because of the challenge presented, not just on the field, but off the field as well, with that lake effect weather. It's frigid cold. And I think with the quarterback like Cam Ward being a Southern guy, being a Miami guy, this can be a challenging game for him in these conditions. We saw passes just last week, whether it was Shedeur, but also on Brock Purdy, where those passes may have got away from them because of the wind taking the ball. So it's going to be something to keep an eye on for sure. I also would say keep an eye out on the run game for both of these teams. I think they are going to be huge, especially to open up the offense for both of these teams so these quarterbacks can have some success through the air. So, I would definitely keep my eye out on those running backs. I think they are going to be huge. And, the battles up front, whether it's with Simmons or with Myles Garrett, it's going to be really interesting to see which one of these teams are able to manage these guys because there's no stopping them. There's only managing at this point.
Definitely, definitely. I definitely expect a close game. I know each team has their challenges and each team has their bright spots as well. And it'd just be interesting to see which one is able to accentuate those and which one is able to shut the other ones down. Again, Chauncy Sanders on the show. Thank you for coming on this episode 368 of
Wow.
Touring the AFC South. If you can, tell everyone where they can find you on social media and any other things you're working on. And of course, you told us earlier, but please tell us again.
Well, Mike, I like to say thanks again. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be on the show and to be a part of this amazing project you've been working on. And I thank you again for all of your leadership and your mentorship moving forward in the past as well in my young career. With that, you can find me on Instagram at Chauncy D. Sanders, also on Twitter at Chauncy Sanders. That's Chauncy, not EY. And I can't give you any bets. I'm not, there's already one Chauncey in trouble here now, but you could definitely reach me at that. And, I'm excited again. Tip off tomorrow is at 12 p.m. Central for Tuskegee. Excuse me. I keep wanting to go back to Tennessee State, but with Tuskegee and Alabama A&M women's basketball. You can find that on Swag TV with yours truly on the call. So I appreciate it once again, Mike, for having me on the show and talking a little AFC South football.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I greatly appreciate you coming on the show. Again, man, hey, anytime you need to talk, you got my number, man. Let me know.
Will
But yes, sir. Yes, sir. I just want to thank everyone for tuning into this episode. Of course, my name is Mike Patton. I'm the host of the show. You can find me on the artist formerly known as Twitter at Mike Patton82. That's MikePatton 82. You can also find me on Instagram and Threads at that's THA, not THE _general_MP. Touring the AFC South, you can find on all listening platforms, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, you name it, we are there. We are also on the Mike Patton YouTube network. So go ahead and subscribe. Click the bell so you don't miss any episodes. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to this episode of Touring the AFC South. We're out. Peace.